Guys, a little update on the Dumb Magic build restoration. As y'all can see, I got the new stringers bedded down. I got my drain hole drilled and sealed in there. What I'm doing for these other holes, which are hooks and trailer attachment hooks, and the speedometer, the original speedometer, I got the airline clean, and I'm going to use that. What I did was I actually oversized drilled the holes, and I filled them with thickened, well, first I did a neat epoxy through the transom holes, and then after that I filled them with thickened epoxy, and then the idea is that I'm going to go in and drill in my smaller holes. I'm going to sand it down, and then I'm going to drill in my smaller holes. But I used some 5200 down here for the drain plug. As you can see, it goes all the way through. And yeah, so anyways, that was my thought on doing the holes through the transom. I wanted everything to be sealed good, so I did oversized holes, and I did neat epoxy, let it get tacky, and then put in my thickened epoxy so I can drill out smaller holes and drill into there. I'll probably use sealant as well, but just another backing for this project. So the stringers I got in, I don't know if I posted a video of me doing, I did the outside stringers first. And how I did that was I used the biaxial tape. I have to look up what exactly was the specifics on the biaxial tape that I used. So what I did was, obviously the hole was sanded down, and put in my neat epoxy on both the wood and the hull, and then laid down thickened epoxy on the wood and the hull, stuck them together. And I had a similar setup for the outside too, because I did the outside two stringers first, and what I didn't know is that actually very much helped me, and I'll explain why here in a minute. But I just had the front and the back, those two boards that you see there, I had those drilled into the outside stringers. And then I put a board on top of those. So this was before the center stringer was in. I put a board on top of those, and I weighted that down. I forgot what I used. I think I just used a few boards. I think I might have walked through this in the last video, but just to reiterate, I might have missed something. And so after I put down the fiberglass, I then did a neat epoxy over it. And then I actually went back and I did another neat epoxy over it. And actually right there was a spot where I'd almost cut through the hole, and I laid down a few fiberglass patches, getting smaller and smaller, and just put a bunch of epoxy there. I didn't go all the way through the hole, but just wanted to be safe there. And so after that, I had drilled these two together, put beams across, let it sit for a few days. Then yesterday I got in here and I made my center stringer. So the outside two are cedar, the middle one is pine. I know that some people say that, I mean, it's probably correct to use the marine ply and glue them together. I just unfortunately don't have the resources right now to do that, and it's really been getting on me to get this done. So it's not even a waiting game. I figured with going with epoxy, and I actually did 2 layers of biaxial tape, the same process, but in between the 2 layers of biaxial tape I did neat epoxy as well. So I mean, there's like double the coats on this center beam, and as y'all can tell, I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but yeah, I mean, it turned out pretty well. There's almost no air bubbles. There's a bug in there, but there's almost no air bubbles all the way down, and The method that I used to cut the stringer was actually pretty difficult. I had done some angled cuts on the outside stringers because the hole on the outside, either side, as it moves towards the front of the boat, it actually gets a little bit higher. So I had to do an angled cut. They're taller at the back and shorter at the front. And how I did that, for the outside stringers, so I wanted them to match up with just being right on top of this old floor that I cut out. So I actually had, like, I think one of these boards, and I had cut it longer to where it just barely sat on top of either side. And I measured, I cut the boards flat to the back, and then I went all the way to the front and measured my distance, or my difference from the front to the back in the height difference. I made another board that went across here, and I measured down to them. I think I actually did the center board. I had a shorter center board, and I measured the difference, and the difference would have been the same for each two. So I just made two exactly the same pieces, and they sit right on top of there. And then so for the center board, I guess I'm trying to rush this, which I really shouldn't, because it's a lot that I went through. So let me slow down. So in the center board, after I made those angled cuts, I actually got really lucky. Well, I mean, I say lucky, it was a cheap piece of pine, but so what I did was I made with a test piece, I made the curve of the boat, which I kind of did with a sander. Just sanded it over and over again until I got a really nice fit to the hull. And so after I made that curve, I replicated that curve onto a taller piece, because the piece that I had made it on was too short. It was like here, and I didn't realize it when I bought it. I didn't do any of the measurements when I bought it, I don't think. I mean, I did some rough measurements, but that changed. So anyways, I replicated the curve that I made on the bottom side of this, and then I was gonna do the same exact thing and do an angled cut from the front to from the back to the front, being lower. And I'm glad I didn't. What I actually did was I had this board, this same board here, before I had screwed it down, because the center stringer that I got, the pine that I bought, was taller. So what I did was, I think I measured the difference in the back to the outside stringers under them, or I put this board right behind it, and I measured the distance, and I cut the pine that I have, this taller pine, and I cut it all the way across at that flat. And I came to test fit it before and do my difference measurement, and then cut my difference cut, and I put it in, and it fit perfect. Like it's pretty much perfect. I mean, it's within like a millimeter of being perfectly the same angles as the outside were, and it's flat on the top. The curve that I had to do on the bottom of this thing was only on the front, so like it's flat, like from top to bottom it's flat, and I wasn't expecting that, but it makes sense, because that means that the outside of the hole goes up as it goes to the front, but the middle of the hole stays flat. And so I pretty much got lucky there and didn't have to go buy another piece of wood after realizing that it was, after I would have made my angled cut, if I would have just done it all in one, that it was indeed the wrong angle. So I got lucky there. Anyways, got this board in, and how I set this up, as you can see, it's still set up in its drying procedure. It's definitely dry, But I have each of these boards bowed up because I put a shim under each of the middle ones and screwed it in. So I started from the back and I screwed it to the outsides, and then I put these shims under, and that kind of like forced it down into the glue. And that allowed me this setup of having 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 screws along the board, allowed me to get there was a slight bow, and I think the hole might have also had the area that I sanded out wasn't exactly straight, so it just helped me align it perfectly. It's got a great fit. So I started from the back, did those 3, had someone standing on it, went to the middle, had them stand on the front, did those 3, put my shim under the middle, and then I went to the front and they were still standing on it, and I put my shim under the middle. So these boards are actually a little bit bowed up. They're putting quite a bit of pressure down on it, and it's been like this for about 2 days. So anyways, that's a major thing I got done. I'm really proud of the fiberglass work that I did there. The 2 layers of biaxial tape, I coated the wood twice. Everything was a wet bond. There was no dry bonding, so I didn't have to sand anything. I slathered down with epoxy because I already went with pine, so I was like, well, I mean, I have this epoxy that, you know, you put a thick layer of epoxy, you're gonna be good. So multiple layers of, you know, fiberglass and epoxy. So up here today, I just kind of got some test boards cut. These are just some of the leftover that I had from the transom, I think, yeah. And they've been sitting outside, so they're a little bit starting to look like they're rotting a little bit, but I ended up doing my test cuts, and I think they look good. I only had the screws I had were too long and they stuck through, so I just use these bolts for right now. But this whole idea was to get kind of an idea of where my pilot holes are gonna go for whenever. I'm gonna probably just use pressure treated wood for this front piece and the 2 side pieces here. These seats, they fold up like this. So pretty much I'm just gonna use pressure treated wood, probably cover it with vinyl, put some foam or something in there. I haven't really looked up that process yet, but I wanted to have something in place. Not only can I use these boards for a template, but these boards are kind of just temporarily here if I need to kind of set things down while I'm working. It's really not, it's better to not have them right here where I'm standing if I need to come up, because I have the deck coming up next. So anyways, yeah, I don't know if I also told you, I just kind of went around and filled all these holes with thickened epoxy. I sanded them down and filled all these holes because I'm planning on doing some kind of gel coat or getting it done. That's probably the only thing that I'll get done on it professionally, because I want it to look good, and